Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of Daughters of Kerala. Today I have with me Dr. Minu, an assistant professor of Mathuma College for Women. So, how are you, miss?
I'm good, Pranav. How are
Yes,
you?
I'm good. So, shall we get on with this episode?
Sure.
Yes. So, to begin with, what are your views on today's patrilineal societies in Kerala that came after the nairs?
Okay, so let's say till the British colonization, until the British passed acts that were very much against the Marmakatayan system, there was a gradual shift towards patrilineal in Kerala. Now, today, if you look around, whether it is the Nair community or the Nambudri community, the Syrian Christians, the Latin Catholics, anyone, they follow a predominantly patrilineal system, patrilineal patriarchal system.
Yes.
Now, after this particular these acts that were passed, like the Hindu Succession Act or the Madras Marmakatayam Act passed by the British, and later on there was the Hindu Joint Family Abolition Act. So, after all these acts, there was a gradual emotional, psychological shift or preference towards patrilineal societies because a larger legal framework favored this patrilineal. Now, after the British, even during the rule of, even during in independent India, people favored patriarchy mainly because the legal system was predominantly drawn from the British system, and also there were economic situations that encouraged the shift towards patrilineal. For instance, at the time when the British were leaving, cash crops were making their entry into the Kerala economy. There was a gradual movement towards urbanization and office jobs and such like. So as a result, people began preferring joint family, nuclear families, and for nuclear families to flourish, there was a necessity for patrilineal to be predominant rather than matrilineal. So today, if you look around, it's a patrilineal system that flourishes. Now, and among the nairs also, there are families like the Travancore royal family which practices matrilineal, with the Karnavar being the head and the property, the inheritance being passed down the female line. But if you take most of the Nair families, the predominant way of passing down property is patrilineal, in the sense that the property goes on to the sons. Now, there are a lot of issues related to both matrilineal and patrilineal, about which we will talk at a later stage. Yeah.
So, what were the three main acts that were established to abolish matriliny among the few people that followed it?
Alright, so during the British period, during the 1930s, the Madras Marmakatayam Act was passed. So Kerala was part of the Madras province, and according to this, they did not actually ban matriliny or Marmakatayam as such, but they created situations which led to the gradual diminishing of this system.
What
In
were
the
these
sense,
situations?
I didn't get it.
What were these situations?
All right. So they gave provisions for the individual ownership of property for one. So earlier, the Taravad, the joint property was held by all the members of the family. Everyone had an equal share, like the daughter's children had a share in the family property. Now, this system was abolished, and the British created a provision for the creation of, for people having individual claims over the Taravad.
Okay.
And the authority of the Karnavar was
Yes.
diminished. The Karnavar did not no longer had that kind of absolute control. So if one child in the family, a man in the family wanted to sell his share of the property, that became possible, which was not possible earlier. So this was some of the things that facilitated the decline of matriliny in the Madras Marmakatayam Act. Now, after this, the Succession Act was passed. Okay, the Hindu Succession Act was passed, and it was in the 1950s. Now, according to this, the girl children, the daughters, were given equal share in the father's property. So there was no reference to the mother's property. The inheritance was through the father's line, which made it clear that the legal framework preferred or preferred to see a patrilineal setup. Now again, after that, the Hindu Joint Family Abolition Act was passed in the 1975. Now, according to this, the joint family system was dismantled. Now, this was a necessity of the period because people were shifting to urban areas, people were taking up jobs, and people began preferring the freedom of the nuclear family over the stifling sensation created by the joint family. Now, all these acts were passed because Marmakatayam, matriliny, and that kind of inheritance caused a lot of problems, psychological, economic, and financial, and it created a lot of problems in the psyche of the people involved. So, in order to prevent that kind of a disintegration of the economy, of the psychological level of the people, these acts became very, very important during that period. These were the main acts. And apart from this, let me also tell you, in Meghalaya, among the Garo tribes, they practice matriliny. So they also passed an act called the Meghalaya Self-Acquired Property Act, which said that the property acquired by a person would be owned by that person. In the nair system, the matrilineal system, the property acquired by a person would go to the joint property of the Tarawad. Okay, so that system also came to be dismantled in Kerala as well. So what I'm trying to say is, it was not just in Kerala, even in other states, the Tarawad system or the joint communal ownership of property part was dismantled.
Yes. So earlier you mentioned that these joint family, there was some economic or psychological problems. Could you mention some of the examples?
All right. So, for one of the major reasons, before that, I would also like to give you a background of this system in the sense that when the British came, they could not understand this matrilineal system. That was one thing. They came from a predominantly patrilineal heritage.
Yes.
They came from a very Christian background,
Yes.
which preferred monogamy. So when they came to Kerala, they found a very different scenario where a woman could choose her partners, where a woman could have multiple partners, and then the question of fatherhood arose. Who is the father? Or who is the head of the family? These kinds of questions arose. So one reason for the British banning this was they could not understand the ethos. They could not really digest what was happening. Okay, they labeled it immoral, although this was just a lifestyle.
Yes.
Now, when the British came and they brought in their colonial ideologies, this entire thought process of the people in Kerala began changing. So there was this question of who is the father at various levels. At one level, there is this question of who is the owner, father in the sense of owner, in the sense that is it the Karnavar who is in charge of the children, or is it the biological father who is in charge of the children, or is it the husband of the mother who is in charge of the children. So there were these questions. Earlier, these questions were not even questions. But once the British came and the Kerala public sphere began changing, this became very significant questions that caused psychological trauma to the people hearing these questions. So this led to a lot of psychological damage to the people, and they started feeling that, in a way they started feeling that the British system is better or the patrilineal system is better. So that way the British, it was also a colonial imposition, I would say. It was not that the matrilineal system was bad in itself, it was also because the British could not understand our way of living.
So their doubt, they use that to influence the people into transitioning into patrilineal.
So there was this demand from the nairs for a reformation of the Marmakatayan system.
I see.
So they were also saying that the property problem became, the economic problem was basically centered on this Tarawad and individual share of the property. So the person did not have a share in the property, so he couldn't do anything even though he was the owner. Alright, that was one thing. And someone wanted to do something on their own. Individual initiative was completely stifled. Someone wanted to do something of their own, there would be no use because it would go to the Tarawad and the Karnavar would still be handling it. So individual initiative was stifled. There were these psychological issues, and there was the suppression of women within the matrilineal societies. And we say that matrilineal societies are very women-centered.
Yes.
But the reality is the Karnavar is the head of the family, and the Karnavar is the one who decides how much food grain should go out of the granary for one particular day. So the woman have to stand with the moram, with the thing, and the man will decide, okay, the Karnavar will decide, okay, today you use this much rice. So even those basic rights were denied to women, even though in name women were the owners of the property. So there was a suppression of women and their children. Under the control of the carnival, the sisters' children were also suppressed. So all these issues came together to create a situation where there was widespread anxiety about continuing this.
So basically, the British saw a lack of equity in this system. So that would be one of the reasons why they changed, they called for reform. Would you agree with this?
Partly. They saw that there is gender inequality in the matrilineal system, but we can't discredit the fact that there is more gender inequality in the patriarchal system where women do not have any rights.
Yes,
So
that's true.
more than gender equity, the issue before the British was actually moral. They don't say it anywhere. But the reality was they came from a monogamous system. They came from a very Christian background,
Yeah.
and they couldn't digest what was happening in front of them.
It was mostly because of them trying to implant their morals and beliefs into the Malayalis.
Exactly. And I would also not discount the demerits of the matrilineal system. Like I said, individual initiative was completely gone. I mean, it was not encouraged. The carnivore had a stifling, grip over the family.
Iron fist.
Exactly. And there were all these issues centered on caregiving. So all these were factors, and the joint family itself was a cause of concern. So all these led to the abolition or the dismantling of this system.
I see. So, what do you think we should, us people today, what should we take away from these, from what these societies couldn't do so nicely, like you said earlier about the matrilineals flaws and the patrilineal also having certain flaws. What do you think we should learn from this to address the issue of gender equity or equality? Yes.
So whether it is a patrilineal system or the matrilineal system, the reality remains the same. Women are given secondary position.
Yes.
In the patrilineal system, the problem is women do not have any access to property, or they don't have any decision making power. Now, let's say people say in matrilineal women do have property rights, which is true. Women do have access to property. But how much control do they have over this property? That is a debatable. Not much. So, carnivore who decides. Okay. And so, whether it is a matrilineal system or the patrilineal system, the gender inequality, the imbalance remains. From both these, if we consider both these systems, the only thing we can say is it is all about the change in the larger social order.
Yes.
A change from patrilineal to matrilineal or matrilineal to patrilineal will not bring about substantial changes in the mental makeup of the people.
Yes.
Women have to come to the forefront. Women have to go out and work. Okay, and I think the patrilineal system kind of enabled it. Because in the matrilineal system, there was the iron grip of the carnivore preventing the woman from coming out, and there was the joint family with all its ethos and morals.
Yes.
But in the nuclear family, there is more of flexibility, and you can say that after the shift to patriarchy, more women are going out for work.
Yes.
Women have at least a limited amount of control over finances.
Yeah,
Okay.
so there is
Yeah.
more equity in this. Like they have more.
Yeah, kind of. Perhaps.
Finances and all that.
Yeah, you can say that in some senses.
Yes.
But I would say the problem still remains. But then, these systems like the matrilineal system, another aspect was a woman could take multiple partners.
Yes.
So these issues, although they were not a problem before the British came, in the novel social sphere, this became a contested issue. This became a problematic issue. So the shift to patrilineal kind of ended this practice. Whether it is good or bad is a debatable issue, because in the matrilineal system, the woman had agency. She could choose her partner. But when it comes to the patrilineal system, the woman does not have that kind of a choice. She does not have the freedom over her own body. So these are debatable issues. However, the legal system prefers patrilineal, and the legal systems are all centered around this idea of patrilineal. So considering the current scenario, that is probably the only way forward if we have to exist. Whether it is good or bad, or whether it is favorable to women or not, is a highly contested issue.
Okay. So we know that it's highly debatable, but ultimately it's the mentality of the people.
Absolutely.
Like in our minds, men are primary and women are secondary. It's we can't deny that. It's like a very obvious mindset everyone has.
Absolutely.
So I think that's the reason why women are not so financially free, or they are like not that independent as compared to men.
Yeah.
With the Karnavar, the
Mhm.
head of the house, being the head of the house, controlling everything she does,
Absolutely.
the
Yeah.
woman does in the
Yeah.
house,
Yeah.
and then with patrilineal, the inheritance or through the father's line. So it's pretty obvious. It's explicit that men are like more controlling in our society.
Absolutely.
So that yeah.
So all throughout the ages, it has been like that. Now there is this. People talk about how patrilineal arose, patriarchy arose. Initially, women and men went for hunting and gathering, but gradually, with the issue of reproduction and looking after children, women got confined to the house.
Yes.
So the child rearing responsibility was primarily given to women. As a result of that, men came to be dominant in the public sphere, men came to have financial control, and that system persisted. So even today, even though in a middle class family, let's say there's a maid or whoever to or parents to look after the child, the woman is the primary caregiver.
Yes.
There
They
are also
nurture.
absolutely, yeah, so there are also families where the woman's salary goes to the husband.
Yes.
This is a patriarchal setup.
Yes.
But everywhere, this mentality, this attitude that women are secondary, unless this changes, no amount of legal sanction or changes can bring about gender equality
Or equity.
or
In,
equity.
in
Yeah.
terms of finance.
Finance, yeah, absolutely, finance. The choice
Yes.
over one's own
Decisions.
body, all that.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this has been a quite good conversation. I thank you for your interesting views. So that's it, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this episode.